Hey y'all, so I wanted to talk about A Night on the Farm. This is a indie horror game. I played it on the PS5, but having said that, you could play it on Steam if you wanted. This game is definitely one of the least graphic heavy games that I played in a while. It looks like a rough PS1 game from a first person perspective. Again, it might be because of like the budget, what they had to work with, but it was also kind of cool. You know, everything is super grainy as you're running around. You're like squinting your eyes. You're like, this is bad for my eyesight. And you're trying to look around and pick up rocks to find things and all that. And so it's got that old school rough vibe to it. It is narrative driven. There's no action or like running away from stuff. You're just experiencing the story as you go, which again is something I like in my horror games. And this experience as well is a little bit different in terms of you can finish it in a couple hours. It's like really short, an hour and a half maybe, if you knew what to do, and maybe even an hour. It really depends if how much you replay it. Even though it's super short though, it does have replay value. There's multiple different endings. Now, you know, me with games that have multiple endings, I tend to usually just pick the ending I stick with and be like, that's my canon ending. I don't need to go back. The good thing, though, is the way this game's set up, it saves kind of towards the end right before you start making the decisions to create the ending. So you don't necessarily have to play the game all the way from the beginning again. You can just go back and choose these different options to see what different outcome is. There's at least like 4 or 5 different ones. As you're going through the game, you're like solving little puzzles, you're reading notes, you're listening to tapes that's like fully voiced over. The character you're playing isn't voiced, but there's little tapes that you find that kind of tell a point of view of one of the characters. And because it's a shorter game, it's not a lot. There's like 4 or 5 tapes. There's like certain little item toys that you can collect. There's also little toys you can collect, little extra bonus items that you can search and find. Again, you're looking around the house, pick up objects, see where you can interact with, and trying to figure out how to get in this door, how to turn the power on here, how to get down here. And again, the story's just told visually through audio. And then as you go further into it, then it gets a little weird. Once you get to a certain area in the story, things start happening, and at first I was like, what the heck's going on? Where am I now? What's going on? And it doesn't really explain to you what to do. You have to kind of figure out on your own. And it took me a few minutes to figure it out. But once I did, it gets you introduced into this element. And then you'll be doing it again and again and again. And I just kind of went with the flow. I was like, all right, here we go. We're just going with this. And then by the time you get to the ending is where the game all of a sudden brings in all these choices. And depending on how you respond, that's the ending you get. And so the first half of the game is a lot different than the second half in terms of its vibe, what it's having you do, how you react to stuff. And so I like that it kind of changed so drastically, which I was not expecting that. You know, because in the beginning you're like, oh, it's a gradual buildup as a lot of these games are. But then all of a sudden it's like, bam, you're just like hit with this and you're trying to figure out what the heck's happening. And then you're just going all the way through, all the way to the end. Yeah, this game is worth checking out if you want to get through a real game real fast. If you want to play a game that's like a PS1 game, if that's not your vibe, if the graphics are too like grainy or whatever for you, it's probably not gonna draw you in. I can't recommend you play this game then. I feel like this game is gonna be liked by certain people. Other people are just gonna be like, this is boring, I'm not into it. But if you really take the time with it, you know, it's a fun story. It's not necessarily the best story you've heard. It's a story you probably heard a few times before, but told in different ways. But it's short. You know, you can complain about that. The fact that I can play this kind of game on the PS5, I think is great and it's funny. So that alone just makes it an interesting experience.